What I care about most is the meaning of life, specifically the meaning of your life, of an individual's life, and which I really believe that the meaning of life is very valuable to speak about. What is the meaning of our lives as humans? I think the question is different and is different when you talk about what is the meaning of a Jewish life. And I don't mean this to be chauvinist. I think you could talk about any person in any culture. And I think you should be able to talk about what is the meaning of being you, whatever your identity is. I think a person needs to figure out what is the meaning of being me uniquely.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What Matters Most. I'm very excited to have today with us Rabbi Jack Cohen. He's actually my cousin. So, hey, cuz. He's also, I guess he was a physicist in a past life, but he's now a rabbi and an educator. He's a writer. Today, he's a principal on the Torah and Jewish academic side of a school in Miami. And he's also the author of a new book, Nurture Their Nature. So I hope we get to talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah, and in essence, well, of course, he's a father, an amazing father and husband and everything else you can ask for. Baruch Hashem. And I want to ask you, Jack, Rabbi Jack, to just go ahead and say, what matters most to you, to what you think where you think we are in the world.
Wow, that's great. This is like no chit chat. We just cut right to what matters most. I like that. First of all, I would say it's in no way, shape, or form insignificant that we're cousins. For those of you who did not grow up in large Sephardic Latin families, to be specific, we're actually second cousins, once removed. But in our family, that's just called being a cousin. We live in a neighborhood of Miami where we actually have a lot of cousins, actually a lot of Daniel's cousins, so-called cousins, second cousins, once, twice removed. They live there. And when my kids moved, after like a couple months, my kids they speak very broken Spanish, but one of them had this epiphany and he says, Dad, I know what the word primo means. Like I get it now. Primo is the Spanish word for cousin. And I'm like, what? He said, primo means neighbor, right? Because we have so many neighbors who are cousins, first degree, second degree, whatever it is, that for them, that's what it means. That's the feeling, which is so beautiful.
It's actually
But
hilarious.
it's an amazing thing. It's in the US in general, people barely know their uncles and aunts, they're barely different from acquaintances. You get together Christmas and Thanksgiving or whatever. So, but in our family, we were gifted because of the closeness of our grandparents,
Yeah.
who I attribute it to their parents, to our great grandparents. I attribute their closeness and also their efforts over the years to stay together, to do family reunions.
Totally.
So, not a trivial fact, and I think very much connected to what's most important to me is the value of family, which I really see as a gift. It was gifted to me. It was given to me by my parents and our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents, and I'm sure that legacy goes way back. It's a huge gift. So definitely worth
Yeah.
starting with that.
So
Should I correct you on the physicist part? So I majored in physics. I was never a physicist. Thankfully, I graduated with a degree in physics, really against all odds. I almost quit on several occasions in those 4 years. I majored in physics and philosophy, neither of which is very pre-professional.
yeah.
It's really just the sign of a kid who's trying to figure himself out, figure life out. A American liberal arts system that
Cool.
enables lost souls like myself. And
Yeah, I have to say that in this respect, like why do I think it came up is because like I remember seeing you like when I was a child and you were probably in university. I was like, wow, like Jack, you weren't a rabbi back then. Like the cousin Jack is like so cool, and he's like doing this amazing science stuff, and I kind of looked up to you, properly. And I think this looking up to you actually went on for the years, because like after you chazarta b'tshuva, you did teshuvah. Like I wasn't there yet, right?
Right,
And
right.
sort of like I still remember, and I actually, yeah, we moved homes a year and a half ago or something, and the book that you gave us, your present for our wedding, came up. It was there. So now it's like in the beautiful library, and I saw the beracha, the blessing that you wrote in the book,
So
and it
so
really really like got me to me. Like I like started crying when I read it. Because in a way it was almost like a small prophecy of the beracha coming true, right? Like in terms of going in the path of Hashem. So
wow, that's awesome.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing that.
the book is The Choice to Be, just in case people are interested.
It's an amazing book, actually,
Yeah, beautiful.
and appropriate for a deep, very sophisticated thinker like yourself. So, yeah, so just about that path and about what matters to me most, I would definitely say that from a relatively young age, I was bothered by that question. I was subconsciously afraid of being on a podcast and being asked what matters to me most and not having a good answer. Um, we'll see. We'll see how that phobia plays out. But I actually remember I was in an interview to enter into as an undergrad to Yale University, which was like a kind of dumb childhood dream. I lived in Connecticut, and that's about as prestigious as you can get, especially in a society that has complete adulation for the college system. And so, making it in life goes about as far as getting into Yale. And I was 17. Yeah, I was 17 years old, and I jumped through all the hoops and did all the honors classes and the AP classes, and I did an internship at Yale, to kind of get a foot in the door. I didn't donate a wing to the university because we just couldn't do that. But all the other hoops I jumped through, and the interviewer asked me, "What are you passionate about?" I don't know. I I did a bunch of extracurricular activities. My resume was like padded with stuff that I thought I had to do in order to get into college. But that question stumped me. I BS'd some sort of answer to her. I don't know. I said like art or something. Well, I loved art, but I wouldn't say I was passionate about it. That
Well,
bothered me.
what drives you? Like I guess at that age, in the society we grew up with, we didn't know what drove us, what was our purpose, like what
Yeah.
passion comes from a sense of meaning, right?
A sense of meaning, a sense of like alignment. I mean, I think passion runs through you. That's the way I ended up seeing it. I knew a couple of peers who were like really dedicated to stuff. There was like one girl in my public high school who was like an artist like to her bones. She was like always doing art, like the kind of girl in high school who was like always like doing like these like masterpieces like on her arm. That's like when she's like in math, and then when she's in art, she's
Yeah.
just and then when she's out of school, she was like doing like these like massive art installations in her garage, and I was always like jealous of her. I wouldn't have been able to articulate it, but years after, I juxtapose like this kind of like awe with which I saw this girl, Julie Pereira. If she listens to this podcast, I don't know if she's one of your subscribers, but um, and then this like question that like stumped me at 17 years old from this Yale interviewer, who, by the way, they didn't accept me. In case you're at the edge of your seat, what happened in that story?
We won't leave you hanging.
Yeah, no. Um, but it was just like, what do I care about? Now it turns out that what I ended up realizing I really care about is not a typical thing. It's not on the list of like the short list of things that a career counselor is going to tell you might care about. What I care about most is the meaning of life, specifically the meaning of your life. of an individual's life, and which I really believe that the meaning of life is very valuable to speak about. What is the meaning of our lives as humans? I think the question is different, and is different when you talk about what is the meaning of a Jewish life. And I don't mean this to be chauvinist. I think you could talk about any person in any culture, and I think you should be able to talk about what is the meaning of being you, whatever your identity is, whether you're Black American or you are Sudanese or Palestinian or whatever, Nicaraguan. I think a person needs to figure out what is the meaning of being me uniquely. I do not believe in this, and you'll see in a moment.
Like
I
the
don't.
circles of identity until you get more and more individualized in that experience
I
of
think it's
life.
meaningful. I don't believe. I do believe in color blindness in a certain sense. I know that's like a racist thing to say, but Coleman Hughes, if you read his stuff or listen to him, he talks about color blindness in the way that Martin Luther King Jr. talked about it. I do believe in that. I believe that when you're talking to someone, kind of like in terms of just let's listen to what they're saying. The content of their character, not the color of their skin. However, when it comes to a person's identity, when you're listening to who they are, there is no way to untangle their identity from the culture they grew up with, and the color of their skin, and the way they're perceived, and the language they speak, and their religion. Like, that's part of who they are. So I do think there's a conversation about what does it mean to be Jewish? What does it mean
In
to
fact,
be?
just
Yeah.
to put a little bit of the sort of extra context into this, like it just makes sense that the context in which God or life put you in is going to be part of what defines who you are
How could it not?
on purpose,
Yeah.
on purpose.
Yeah.
And
And
so
it's beautiful.
it's meaningful to, yeah, exactly.
And not to put a person in a box. And maybe, well, let's kind of drive towards that. It's not about putting a person in a box. It's about, I think of it more as like it's the soil in which you grow,
Yeah.
which is a kind of a more liberating. It's a more liberating way to think about it. A box contains you, but the soil from which you grow is like, what's the nourishment, the spiritual nourishment that you draw from. And a plant that the plants that grow in Miami are different than the plants that grow in Connecticut, where I grew up. They're just different. Just look around. They're different. It lends itself to different kind of growth and development. And then also, who are you as an individual? What is the meaning of your particular life? That that is, I'm passionate about that, and I'm passionate about life's journey. I'm passionate about a person figuring out what matters most to them, and how they're going to materialize what matters most, which is really the process of life is really knowing yourself, and then having the guts to like live according to that. It takes guts, but I think the fear of failure should be very small in our minds compared to the fear of never materializing what
Trying to
matters to you.
find it.
That to me is the scariest thing in the world, is living a life where you had all of these ideas, aspirations, abilities, latent passions, and they all stayed like locked up in a box. That fear can keep me up all night. But
Would you
anyways,
say that, would you say that the passion or the things that you're really like passionate about, and you're the meaning of sort of the things you're doing and you're finding is directly related or impacting sort of the purpose of your life, as in like why you are in this world? How do you see those things related?
yeah. So what I always come back to is a mantra that is appears at the beginning of chapter one of a work called Mesilat Yesharim, which is literally the path of the straight.
The straight.
It does not mean straight in terms of gender or whatever. It means there's a deep
Integrity.
integrity is the word. Beautiful. I think that's the best translation. Where integrity means that you want to do what makes sense for you. Integrity is not no people, no religion has a monopoly on integrity. Integrity means that the kind of honesty, um, and the desire to do what is correct, what is the straight path.
Yeah.
And
Alignment with the truth, but truth
beautiful.
is objective to this in the eyes of God, but it's subjective in our eyes in some sense,
Yeah,
right?
I would say objective in the eyes of God, but because objective, it must be relative
Yeah.
to the person. That's a very hard in like our world that is like you either live in a completely subjective world of wokeism and postmodern post-truthism, or you live in this very heavy-handed, brittle, kind of fascist Trumpism, top down. There's only one truth.
Traditional truths. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a very odd binary, and I actually believe most humans don't actually feel comfortable with either of those
In of them. Yeah.
extremes. So the
Beautifully
way
put.
the way kind of Torah philosophy views it is that there is an objective truth. That's God. That's God's perspective is objective. But because God is objective, it would be objectively wrong for him to judge everyone according to the exact same standard. That would be absurd, because he's objective. I always think about like if you think about like the Olympics, and I had this clarity comes from a rabbi in Israel. His name is Rabbi Zachariah Greenwald, who's one of my good friends' fathers, and he introduced me to this idea that we live in the West with this kind of Olympic mentality, where the Olympic mentality is that like gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal, you are the best at jumping over objects while you run 110 meters. You are the second best at jumping over objects while you run 110 meters, and you are the third best at jumping over objects 110 meters in the world. This kind of best, and we think of that as objective, and obviously in some way it is. Physically speaking, it's objective. Yes, he is the
In the
best.
context of the competition is like,
Yeah, but
yeah.
it's a imagine if you could kind of like design some sort of algorithm that could kind of process literally everything that goes into the context, the person's kind of genetic profile, the socioeconomic status, and the resources that that person had available to them, the social network the person had available to them, opportunities. It's a ridiculous kind of thing if you could kind of feed it all of that information and then
Lives.
past lives, right? On the depths of their psyche and their subconscious. And then you say, like, actually, who actually, given their circumstances, is the most impressive? As God. I mean, as God.
That's the thing. Is like even the question of best is in some sense subjective. Like even if you think about the Olympics, why can we say, why do athletes work years and years of their life to get to that competition and try to win a gold? Because the world has a consensus on the fact that that's the competition to win it, right? But like, and it's, the idea, I think, like, for example, the NBA was always sort of the best, basketball competition. And then there was always this sort of like side kind of like, street basketball culture and the Globetrotters. And this is like how these can be the best when these are clearly better in some, right? Like there's always this dichotomy of like, what does really best mean? And the parameters by which you measure that.
Right. And I think when you start to think about this, you could, if you head down this route, you could kind of unravel everything because we live in a world that's competitive. We live, I believe in free markets. I believe in competition. I believe in, I think the Olympics, I think it's good. I think you will crush all human motivation if you remove objective standards and benchmarks and bars,
Mm,
because that's what motivates people. It does motivate people to compete against some sort of like quote unquote objective standard, right? I think the problem is when it becomes a philosophy, when it becomes an ideology, when your self-worth is measured according to,
right.
that's when people feel like nobody, because I'm not Elon Musk and I'm not Mark Zuckerberg and I'm not, Warren Buffett, and it's like, like, who told you that you need to be them? I mean, I think it's amazing that we have these benchmarks and standards because that's what drives people and keeps people humble in a certain sense, but it's not meaningful. This is something my father, I think, helped me. My father's a big free market person, a big competition, but he doesn't believe it's meaningful. My father worked hard his whole life, and thank God he's had a successful career. He was never someone who I saw in the rat race. Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't meaningful to him in a spiritual sense. It's
It
a
never became an ideology for him.
correct.
It just was part of how his, purpose was being expressed in his life.
Right. And I think that's a very subtle but vital distinction. Because if you give up on competitions, if you just withdraw from all competitions because you don't like the pressure or whatever, you're not gonna be moved in life. You're gonna become a blob. And you're gonna have a resentment towards that world of competition. By the way, what I'm saying now, I think, is one of the illnesses of the world of the woke and the world of socialism, which is a world that's like ideology trying to remove itself from competition. But I think they're making a mistake. And the other thing is that, like, you embrace it and, like, everything's a free market and everything's competition, and it's like a meaningful ideology, and you see yourself as better than those who have not made it in the free market as you have. That's also complete idiocy and is condescending and disrespectful and what everything, all those things. So I think these two dichotomies, and I think you
Yeah.
need a more sophisticated 3D picture to be able to live in the world, have that drive, but also be a happy person, a fulfilled person, a person who actualizes your unique potential in the world and finds that. That's where the meaning lies.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I love that you've identified sort of, these kind of two different dualities almost, right? And like how society has a tendency to move to the extremes. And like I keep seeing sort of maybe in the kind of maybe I'm biased, but like in the implicit lines of your conversation of your narrative that there is a way that Judaism and Jewish wisdom can, in fact, as part of our responsibility in the world, bring some balance into society. Like some sort of that's one aspect of some of the light we're bringing to the world, or doing part of that tikkun olam and so on. But like, how can we do that? Like, because if we look at Torah wisdom, it's there. The path is there. Clarity, is there. How do we bring that? How do we bring this um, clear 3D picture of reality into the consciousness of the global humanity?
Is it okay if we talk some Torah for like a little bit?
Let's do it.
So,
More than okay.
I had this, like, revelatory Torah thought over the past week or so. I was thinking a lot about Lot.
Mm-hmm.
So just for context, for I don't know who listens, but just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So basically, in the Torah, you have Abraham. Abraham is considered the founder of the Jewish nation, the Jewish project.
Of monotheistic mentality,
Yeah,
anyway. But
yeah,
yeah,
right, and more broadly, like ethical monotheism in the world, etc. When he's basically introduced, the Torah basically says to him, God says to him, go on a journey to a destination, to a land that I'm going to show you. And in so doing, you're gonna have to, like, leave your society and your societal norms. You're gonna have to really question everything, basically, in order to arrive at something new that the world desperately needs. And he succeeded in doing that. As he's leaving, it says that his nephew, by the name of Lot, who seems like a completely secondary character, accessory character, it says, the verse says, and Lot goes with him. And then one or two verses later, it says, and Abraham took Lot. So it's like this, Lot went with him, and Abraham took Lot.
token.
Okay, so it's like, if you're reading it, if you don't know the story, you're like, okay, like, okay, a random guy, like, whatever, his nephew, like, cute, like, it's cute, okay. But if he's just cute, like why is it naming him? The Torah is very selective about which characters, which people it names, but it names him. Then it turns out if you really pay attention, Lot takes like center stage for the next two Torah portions. Really center stage. And he does so in the context of a certain place in ancient Israel called Sodom. Sodom. In Hebrew, Sodom. Okay? Excuse me, getting over something. What's Sodom? Sodom is in the Jordan Valley. Modern day Dead Sea. Okay? Now, if you think about it, the Dead Sea we know the Dead Sea is the lowest place on earth. But if it's, by the way, I promise you that this is relevant to what we were talking about, okay?
I trust you.
If your listeners are like, what the hell is he doing right now? I promise you it'll be relevant, okay? Anyway, so the lowest place on earth. Oh, look, over here. So you can see this in my 3D. I don't know if you can see it's 3D, but it's a valley, right? And this is the Dead Sea over here. So if it's the lowest place on earth, we know that gravity will make water flow to the lowest place on earth. So it should be not the Dead Sea, but it should be the most fertile place on earth. Just geologically, in principle, all streams will flow down there. And apparently that's what it was. That it was the most fertile place in the ancient world was this valley. And at some point, when both Abraham and Lot have become wealthy, and Lot is basically laying claim to the promised land because he's saying, listen, Abraham, my uncle, has no kids. I'm his descendant and his heir apparent, and this land was promised by God himself. So he's basically assuming entitlement to the land. Abraham basically says, listen, it's not ours yet. It's promised. It's going to come whenever God grants it to us. God will make it known with. And Lot's mentality is like,
Grabbing.
no, we have to take action. Like we have to grab it, you know? And Abraham says, like, it is not working. Your shepherds are basically shepherding in anybody's property, and you can't do that. Anyways, they split up. The text then says that he lifts his eyes and he sees a land that's described as like the Garden of God, which is of course an allusion to the Garden of Eden. What land is that? Not the Garden of Eden, the area of Sodom and its surrounding 4 cities. Okay, there's like 4 suburbs around Sodom, and he goes there. Now, naturally, if you think about it, who were the people who were attracted to Sodom? So the people who are looking to make money. So there's a kind of gold rush in Sodom. Now, you could understand that people who are looking to make money, they don't want immigration to that part of the land because they're thinking in a classic zero-sum way. Every new person that arrives is taking a piece of the pie and is diminishing their share. And so what ends up being created over there is a uber capitalist society where it's not capitalism as a market, an approach to a
free market.
Yeah, it's capitalism as a philosophy, as an ideology.
Like the individual is the egoism, the for my interest.
Right. It kind of like very extreme Ayn Randiism, like to the point that the way the Talmud describes it is charity was outlawed. Why would you outlaw charity? So when I was a kid, I just thought because they're bad people. No, it's not because they're bad people per se. It's because the ideology is an ideology where if you give people handouts, then they're going to become entitled, then they're going to become dependent, and then you're paying the bill because of their laziness, right? So it's like extreme. Anyways, Lot basically gets drawn into that, and there's a war, and he ends up being taken hostage, and he's literally with the king of Sodom, the wealthiest person in Sodom, and they're literally in these like mud pits. That's where they get rescued from, these mud pits, and it's this like powerful image of like he's with this like ideal of this capitalist society, this competitive capitalist society, and they're in the same mud. And it's like this like moment of like you think like it's like his realization that it just doesn't work. That if you pursue wealth in that way, you could end up in the mud. You could crash and burn, and anything could happen to you. But he's not convinced. He goes back to Sodom, this time thinking he's going to bring Abrahamic philosophy to Sodom. Hopefully you see now that it's going to connect to your question. And it ends up in this catastrophic destruction of Sodom. Basically, there's a mob outside of his house. These guests come, who the Torah tells us are angels, who are disguised as humans. He's trying to, in an Abrahamic way, kind of host them and bring them in and take care of them. People are like, "We heard you have guests here. You know, there's no guests allowed. Let us know the guests." There's a connotation of a sexual violation. They want to know the guests in a biblical way. And he goes out there, and he's described as a judge, Lot, because he had a position of leadership. He kind of succeeded in being an influencer, so to speak, in Sodom. And he's trying to talk down the mob. And the mob's like, shut up. Like, give us your guests. Who are you? Like, you're a random guy, right? Who are you to tell us? And they basically threaten to knock down the door. And the guests, these angels, as angels tend to do, supernaturally kind of save him. They take him out, and the whole city collapsed. Sulfur rains down. Today, if you go to the Dead Sea, it smells like sulfur, like rotten eggs. And the most fertile place on earth becomes a complete wasteland. And Lot is saved. Now, Lot,
There's so many chidushim for me there, so I'm so thankful.
it's amazing. If you start to like study it, it's like insane. It's so rich. Lot is the great-great-great-grandfather of King David. King David is the great-great-great-grandfather of who we call Mashiach, Messiah. Okay, the notion of Messiah, which is a notion that comes from Judaism, is obviously attributed to Judaism, obviously made famous by JC. Okay, but the messianic ideal that the world can come to a stable utopian world that just gets better and better and better, and evil is vanquished, and there's no war, and there's no discrimination, and the world is filled with God consciousness.
Pure love. Yeah.
That comes from this dude, this random character, Lot, who's like completely flawed and almost satirized in the Torah. When everything's being melting down, there's death and destruction. It's like a nuclear holocaust, basically, okay, in that area. He doesn't know. He didn't read the Torah. He doesn't know that it's localized to the Jordan Valley, and neither do his two daughters who escaped with him. His two daughters get him drunk, sleep with him in order to be pregnant with him, right? And as disgusting as that sounds, the rabbis teach us that, like, you have to see it in context. They really thought that the world was being destroyed. They had a cultural memory of the world being destroyed through the flood. And so that was a real possibility that humanity could be destroyed. It was not a foregone conclusion that humanity would always exist. And so they thought they were saving the world. It was a heroic thing. But anyways, they get pregnant. They have two kids. One kid the first one names the kid Moab, which in Hebrew, you could only appreciate in Hebrew, is Me'av, from the father. So she was so proud of what she did. She named him. I even slept with my father in order to save humanity. And the other one named Ammon, which is like my people, like from within my people. It's a more subtle, more modest name. These two people end up creating two nations, right? They come from big stock, and they're not random Joe Schmoes. They end up creating two nations, Moab and Ammon, who appear throughout the remainder of Tanakh, of the Bible. From Moab, a princess many years later, I don't know, like let's say 500, 600 years later, okay? I'm estimating rapidly. There's a princess
around the era of Megillat Ruth.
Exactly. A princess from Moab marries into a prominent Jewish family. Her name is Ruth, and there's a book of the Bible called Ruth, and she is the great grandmother of King David. A generation after King David, King Solomon he had multiple wives, okay, for reasons beyond the scope of this digression of a digression, and one of them her name is Naamah, the Ammonite from Ammon, and they have a kid whose name is Rechavam. So from both of these kids, from these incestuous relationship, from this highly failed character, You have descendants who marry into not just the Jewish people, they marry into the dynasty, the primary dynasty in the Jewish people, which is the Davidic line. And so Mashiach comes from Lot and this like
Amon
whacked
and
out
Moab.
scenario. It's like, why? So the simple thing, which I for many years I've known, is that because God basically has to kind of hack the system because the system is so opposed. To make it meaningful when it happens, you need opposition. So like in any good movie or book, it has to be hard for the protagonist to do anything meaningful. Otherwise, it's not meaningful. If it's just he rises to fame and stardom easily, then it's like boring and it's not meaningful. So in the same way in the universe, God basically creates this oppositional forces, and so to hack those forces, so to speak, God goes around. He kind of does it in a way that's like confuses. It would have confused anyone. It comes from the unexpected. Fine, all that's true and amazing, and I'm not doing it justice. But I'm like, what is it about Lot? What is it about Lot that drove this? Like, is it? I don't think it's just in spite of his faults. I think there must be something there that's because of his faults. And here's the punchline. And here we'll have a conversation to unpack it based on what the conversation. I think Lot is a kind of a spiritually exuberant activist. I think if we met Lot, we would be enamored by him. I think he's a romantic. I think he's the one who went to his uncle and said, "I'm going with you." He's like, no, listen, Uncle Abe, I'm going with you. Like, you don't understand. I'm going with you. To the point that he was so exuberant that Avraham said, okay, fine, okay,
I'll take you.
let's go. And what happens when they're in the land of Canaan, Israel, modern day Israel, he's like, Uncle Abe, like, we have to do something about this. I actually just saw someone today post on Substack, one of these people who grew up in the religious community but like became disenchanted or whatever. And there's a bunch of people, as a whole like ecosystem in Substack of like former religious Jews bemoaning the religious world. Some of their critiques, many of their critiques I agree with. Their conclusions I don't, but their critiques I do. And he wrote this very poignant piece today or yesterday where he's like, waiting for Messiah is wrong. Waiting for Mashiach. It's like, stop waiting and start building. And it's like world progress is because of those who stopped waiting for passively for Messiah to come, and those who like said like he's not coming, we have to build. So I think the thought is correct. I think the conclusion is wrong. Lot was that guy. Lot's the guy who's like, I'm not waiting. I'm going to build it. So that's why he goes to Sodom. He's like, clearly that's where the action is. I'm going to be on the outside. I'm going to go get in the action. And that's what drives him after he has complete and utter failure. He's a prisoner of war. He's in the mud with the king. And he goes back there. Are you insane? Go back to your uncle. He's fine. But no, he's like, so like, we got to take action. We have to do it. And I think that the power of Mashiach is also its failing. The notion of a Messiah is the very thing that's brought false and failed Messiahs throughout Jewish history who have been catastrophic in Jewish history. Catastrophic. The people who have so-called taken salvation into their own hands. But that is the energy of Mashiach. The energy of Mashiach is Mashiach now, in the words of the 20th century Chabad Lubavitch movement. Mashiach now. Like, it's about stop waiting, start building. You know, Chabad has literally succeeded in sending rabbis, literally, to the four corners of planet Earth. Anywhere that Jews step foot, there is a rabbi. We're not Christians. We're a very small. I know Christians have spent even. We're very, very, very small. It's an insane concept to do it, but because of that notion of Mashiach now, of we've got to do it, they did it. Now, clearly, it's brought a lot of good, but has not brought salvation. But it moves us forward. So that urgency is the urgency of Lot.
Yeah.
Lot has a connotation of flash of light in the Torah. If you look at the word lahat, is like a flash. Lot also has a connotation in Aramaic of curse, because a curse diminishes blessing. Abraham is called a blessing, and Lot is like the curse that kind of like says, Uncle Abe, we got to do this now. Uncle Abe's like, chill, like we'll get
The blessing will come.
the blessing
But
will come. Like it's a more
yeah,
patient look. And this tension between the Abrahamic fatherly or grandfatherly patience of like, we'll get there when we need to get there, and this impatience and urgency of Lot, in that tension, there's a voltage, and in that voltage is what moves us towards Mashiach, with some very, very difficult bumps along the road, which are called Jewish history. So
right.
connecting it to your question and then
Wow.
unpacking it, that you're like, how do we do this, right? So baked into your question is a very kind of Lot mentality. And, you
Yeah.
and I came to Judaism as, thinking adults. We're called what's called Bal Tshuvas. And I think a Bal Tshuva has this Lot energy, this messianic, like, let's do it. Let's
Yeah.
take it into our own hands.
You have the motivation. You want to get it done.
Yeah.
We have it in our hands. It's like there is this, just to do a small incision as well. Like what you're saying, it's just bring this idea of where we are, so to speak, right? Like with Mashiach, the process of Mashiach, right? Like we're supposed to be in the end of days, like before the beginning of time, in some sense, with Mashiach. And like I've heard many times that, like, of course, like, the state of Israel becoming kind of part of the prophecy of, building the third temple and whatnot, and saying something like, I don't know the name of the rabbi, but there was a rabbi in the US that said that was saying, for thousands of years, we've been waiting for Mashiach, right?
Yeah.
And explicitly waiting.
Yeah.
And he says, but now the Mashiach is here and he's waiting for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the opposite mentality. It's like, that's the mentality of Lot. It's like, now we need to get to the door and open the door of Mashiach. Like also, alluding to possibly Shir HaShirim, but, and Soloveitchik.
Yeah. There's, but this tension is the exact tension that you see historically at the turn of the 20th century between Zionism, which had its religious wings, but what really gave it fuel was really secular Zionism in many ways. And then you have the religious establishment. And the religious establishment was much more like, no, it's not the time. God will show us the time. And obviously, religious Zionism was like, no, we can't wait. We have to take action. That has reverberations till today.
Sure.
Even the so-called Million Man March last week between the Haredi community, which was marching against this the draft bill in Israel,
The enlistment. Yeah.
which I'm really not. It's very, very hard for me. It was very, very hard for me to see that thing, just for so you know where I stand. But that movement and the rest of it is like, what do you mean? Like, we have to take our self-preservation and our self-determination into our hands. You see that it's still there. You see many people who call Ben Gvir and Smotrich messianic, because they are messianic. So I haven't read it, but someone wrote a book called The Third Temple, which is exploring this theme of like, what's it going to look like when there's a third temple? I haven't read the book and I can't comment too much on it, but I just think that this is this fear of like this, if we take it into our own hands, what's it going to look like? Because it is our own hands, and we're humans, and we're flawed, and we're failed. And all these messianic movements, many of which had Jews at the helm, like communism, they fail catastrophically because it's human beings, flawed human beings like Lot, or maybe even lesser of stature, who want to bring utopia with their own hands, and then you end up with humans. So I think that's why the Torah phrases it in this complex way, because it's complex. We do need to take things into our own hands, but with the humility of knowing that ultimate salvation comes from God. Things have to align.
Exactly.
It's no human. Humans are humans. Let's accept it. Humans are humans. No human can build. No bureaucrat, no technocrat can build a perfect society. If you have prosperity, ultimately is the alignment of the stars and everything to make you fortunate, and you should be humbled by the fact that you did your part and things worked out, right? But every
this is really where we.
Yeah, the president who just claims afterwards it's like, oh, the economy is good and unemployment, blah 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 blah, because of me is absurd.
Yeah.
It's
Of
absurd.
course.
It's
Of
absurd,
course.
politicking, whether they're on the right or on the left. Humans are humans. We have to do our part. We can't passively wait to be saved. But at the same time,
Totally.
we're not the ones who save ourselves. We're the ones who put in the effort.
10% of the work, right? It's
Yeah.
that's like, yeah. It's amazing, right? Because like this is so relevant to one of the core concepts, let's say in Kabbalah, in Kabbalistic thought, which like talks about the right line, the left line, and the center, right?
Mm,
Like in the context of alignment, it's like anytime you're gonna try to do something, right, as a messianic kind of mentality, let's say, without actually considering and being fully, in service of God, right? You're gonna fail. So you're not in alignment, right? Whether and the opposite is true. It's like if you're only going to be in service of Hashem, but not actually do and co-create the reality of Mashiach mentality at a collective consciousness level, it's also not going to be there. Like you're not going to be aligned, right? And that's why I believe that there is, and you were kind of, I don't know if you were alluding to this, but that's how I perceived it when you were saying, the painful feeling of seeing the Million Men March. Like there is this sort of very toxic mentality in quite a large part of the Haredi population in Israel. Not to say that there isn't on the non-Haredi population, but like I think we can allude to that specifically and saying like there is a lack of sense of concrete actionable responsibility
I agree.
in how they are part of a society that is way more than just them, right?
I
And their
I agree.
mentality.
I agree. I don't think we solve our problems by pointing blame, which is exactly the
Yeah,
the point over here.
exactly.
So, the secular world, the secular voices who are saying, the Haredim are the problem, that we have a shortage in the army, and the reason we're not, I don't think that's right. I think it's the exact same
That's
problem.
true. Yeah,
And the Haredi thing, like it's not our problem. We're just going to focus on quote unquote spirituality is also wrong.
it's also a problem. Yeah,
But I think forget that stuff for now. To your point, the
yeah.
Torah's mentality is always balancing, is always synthesizing. And just to flesh that out a little bit more, the Torah speaks in triads, right?
Okay.
And so, as you were alluding to, right? So you have
Yeah. Right.
loving kindness, which is like
Right.
give, 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 give. Then there's strength, which is like, worry about,
Receive and
yeah,
yeah,
receive and worry about
boundaries.
limits and boundaries and rules and laws and obligations, right? And each of those are considered like two poles of a spectrum. They're both vital. You literally cannot have one without the other. Giving without limits is you
Toxic.
yeah, toxic. You burn yourself out. You run out of whatever it is you were giving. And limits without giving is cruel and
Selfish and
selfish and
yeah. You
sterile.
cannot build a healthy society from.
Right, exactly. But both together are the stuff of life itself, right? It's the energy of giving and knowing I have limits in order to make it sustainable, self-sustaining and vital and real. And the mentality that brings that is the mentality of what's called tiferet, balance, beauty, harmony, synergy, truth, all those things. And this triad has reverberations everywhere in Torah. Specifically, we mentioned Abraham is chesed and loving kindness, and his son Isaac, who is receiving from him and kind of concretizing what he had given, is is that strength.
Gevura.
And
Yeah.
and Jacob, Yaakov is synthesis. And really, if you think about it, it's only Jacob, it's only Yaakov who is able to raise kids who are dramatically different from one another and keep them in the fold. But that's because of his unique perspective, his synergizing perspective. And this allows our conversation to come full circle, which is that vision of balance, that vision of being able to value disparate ideas and values inside of your own mind and heart is what allows you to value disparate, differing people in the world.
Yeah.
And that
It's what brings to light the individuality in the context of collective.
exactly individuality within collective, are two concepts that are opposites, but they are in the same way. They cannot exist. Individuality without collective will burn down the world in the name of individuality and in the name of my way of seeing things, my way or the highway.
My identity, my this, my that, my.
Exactly. That's like the selfie society. Collective without respecting individuality is also a form of fascism, and is the Soviet Union, and is China, and is all of these things that crush the individual in the name of humanism or some sort of like big fancy word. So yeah, and I think that's why I think this idea is so powerful. The book I co-authored is really about this more on a personal level of how to really internalizing these ideas so we could raise our kids and really understand that our kids are different, that they're not mini me's and they're not mini each other's, that each one needs his and her own way, and at the same time making them appreciate other people. Other people are different. That's such an essential idea in Judaism, and I think is part of the secret sauce that's allowed the Jewish nation to do what
To
we've done
survive.
over the past thousands of years. We could always do better, and we must do better. But I think that mentality is a big tent mentality that gives freedom for difference and uniqueness within the collective, at the same time valuing family, community, nationhood, and our role in the world, and appreciating that there's different people in the world, and even different religions have what to share, right? Judaism makes room for different outlooks on the world, barring certain kind of guardrails. There's 7 guardrails, that all humans should adhere to, that are not really religious per se. But that's the vision, I think, of Judaism. That's what inspires me. That's what matters most to me.
Beautiful. Wow. That's beautiful. Full circle for sure. I'm so thankful for all of this conversation, and the Divrei Torah that you shared has brought a lot of inspiration, and a little bit of disenchantment in some sense, because as you said, like coming from that kind of Baal Tshuva, like definitely, want to, grab that like Mashiach mentality and just get it done, right? And there is an aspect of me that truly believes in that. And of course, the Mashiach mentality first needs to be within in order to be without, right? It's kind of like similar in concept to like New Age spirituality. Healing starts from with you, right? Like you cannot heal the world if you're not healing yourself, so to speak.
Wait,
But
but
I
I
think
don't want
there
to.
is
I don't want to end on that note. Wait, whoa, 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 whoa. 1 second. I don't want to say that. I would say this. I think that the metaphor, and I forget who says this. Many people say this. When a Jew takes 3 steps forward in prayer, there you must feel that it's all on God. All of your problems, all of your challenges is you can't do it. You put your hands up. Jews used to pray with their hands up, and many religions have this idea of, I don't know if the emoji, the emoji like this with the. I always
yeah
use that emoji for prayer, because it's like
for praise.
your
Yeah,
hands up in the air. It comes from the Torah, and the Torah, when the Jewish people are fighting the nation of Amalek, Moses is
Moses
symbolically on top of
lifts
the
his
mountain with his
hands.
hands up. Hands up means like I don't even know what to do. Like I'm putting my hands, which are my creative tools, I'm putting them up in the air like it's your problem. But when you take 3 steps back and you enter into the world, then in order to function in the world, then it's like, okay, Hashem, I got this, right?
I got this. Yeah,
That's this duality. I don't think, and I don't want you to believe, and I don't want you to take your Baal Tshuva exuberance, right? This, like, which is a spark of Mashiach. It is the spark of Mashiach.
yeah,
Again,
yeah.
remember, Lot messed up, but he is still the root of the energy that moves the world forward. Is You can do it. I think we just need to make sure that we're praying, so that we have context, so that we realize we're not going to finish the job. But as the
Yeah,
sages say,
exactly.
the work is not upon you to finish.
Uh,
But we're not free to
to not take responsibility
the
for.
responsibility, right? I think we do have to do it. I think we do need the humility of knowing that each of us is doing our part. No one's going to finish it. There's no, it's not Fidel Castro, and it's not Stalin, and it's not Mao, and it's not any of these people at the top who's going to promise to solve everyone's problem. That's not the vision. That's not the vision. We each have to do our part, and then we have to recognize that the time will come that the Hashem, God, will make everything come together, all the pieces come together. That no individual can do. Every individual can only bring themselves to the table, only bring their vision. This podcast, I'm sure, is one of many things that is uniquely Daniel Ben Aroch, and you're doing that. You should continue to do it. You should continue to have the conversation about what matters to them most. Something here is clearly what matters to you most, and if we're all doing that, making room for other people to bring what matters most to them, with the humility of recognizing that nobody can orchestrate all the pieces. No government, no Mashiach even orchestrate all the pieces. It comes from Hashem. Hashem places Mashiach in the right place at the right time, and Mashiach is just very good at not getting in God's way. That's Mashiach is just very good at realizing that the pieces are moving, and just making sure that everyone does actualize their own potential, and we do it as a collective together.
Wow, beautiful. Definitely don't have anything to add, but I will ask you to have a second conversation, because I think there's many open-ending ends here, especially with regards to the way we can actually convey this to our children. I think that's very present for me as well.
Beautiful. I'd love to have a follow-up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Jack. Thank you. Really,
it's so awesome.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody's reaction, and especially our family.
Okay, lots of love. Bye then.
Take care. Bye bye.